they're slaves?
I prefer to let other people have their own decisions. She got mad at me because I didn't just have a real strong feeling that I'm vegan.
I understand that. I'd like to answer some questions. It's like a social experiment. Would you like to try
Sure.
it? It might be a little challenging at times, just giving you a heads up. Also, the questions I'm going to ask you are going to seem very obvious, but I'm going somewhere with them, so please bear with me. Okay, the first question is, what do you think about forced child labor?
It's very wrong.
What about it makes it wrong?
The context is open, so it depends on the context. But in any context, it's abusive and it's without love or care. And then all of the other implications that could be open to other, just all kinds of abuse and neglect. Probably very bad.
Fair enough. Would you agree that it's also wrong because as adults we're taking advantage of someone who's more vulnerable than us?
Yeah, and it depends on what kind of forced labor we're talking about, but also in like meat packing plants or in farms, it's having too much power over someone who doesn't have any power.
What do you think about slavery?
The kind of slavery we had, of course, is super awful, but it's also, I feel, it just is not something we should try to forget. We should try to understand it. We don't have to feel. It's not about pointing fingers. It's about trying to understand it and trying to be sorry about it. I don't know.
So it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, and to make the effects less wrong, less the consequences of that and how it affects what we are now and division of wealth.
Would you agree that slavery can be about forced labor, but it can also be about owning someone else's property?
I guess so, yeah.
It's just so that we're on the same page moving forward. And what is it about a person that makes it wrong to enslave them? Is there a trait or traits in a person that makes it wrong to enslave them, or needs or whatever?
It should, it's going to always be wrong. Why? I don't know. Mostly because it's wanting the power to have someone else's life and use it to your own end. I don't know if that, I'm sure there's more other answers. Well, usually, I don't know. Maybe if you really like them in some way, but only to your own purposes. I don't know. It just seems if you think you're wanting to enslave somebody, you got a problem.
So if a slave owner was to justify owning a slave because they think that the slave was put here to serve them, what do you think about that?
That would be, I mean, I could see maybe somebody feeling that way. Hopefully I would realize in myself that that is part of my whatever motive or something.
They used to do that actually in chattel slavery. They used to justify owning slaves because they thought that they were put here to serve them by God, for example.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's just not true of any. How do you know that? I don't know. But I would hope that I would be enough aware of myself that I'd notice that if I had that impulse, that was driving the impulse. Because there's nobody who's put here to be a slave, especially, or to even benefit somebody in an abusive way.
Should we care more about the desire of the slave to enslave someone or about the slave being victimized? Which one is more important?
Well, both. Because realizing the problem is really important. But more important would be the desire of whoever to have advantages and to abuse their powers kind of over somebody else. That would be that's kind of the biggest part of the problem. Understanding how prevalent it is, understanding that it exists so that knowing the victims are real. It is pretty important to being able to maybe be on guard against it or make it less effective.
Dealing with the root cause instead of the symptom, which is like human trafficking, slavery, things like that, like the mentality of the slave owner, for example.
Well, for sure that. For sure, the people who want to do that and, getting to be able to contradict that somehow or whatever. But so that I think is probably, it seems like the most important, but I can't say that just general awareness of the victims, maybe that's more important, because then we can be more mobilized in our head or whatever to try to create conditions that don't encourage that, or at least give, or make it easier to know about it and then interrupt it. And so maybe the victims understanding that is maybe more important. I don't know.
I can see that. It's very interesting answers. Okay, so in times of shadow slavery, there were welfarists and abolitionists. The welfarists thought that it was okay to continue slavery if the slaves were treated pleasantly and they didn't suffer too much. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's still very wrong. And it's an excuse. Yeah, there have been arguments too. That, and it was true that when, like in our case, when slavery was in the United States and slavery was abolished, well, there were certain politicians who felt like we needed to be a national effort to help the transition. So I think 40 acres and a mule was one of the catchphrases for certain people, that it needed to be some support to help formerly enslaved people have something to begin with, because they didn't have money, banking, any connections. They were really just thrown out to the wolves. So there was the slavery in Brazil, I know, was much more abusive. They weren't owned, but they just, until it was abolished by England, I think, across the transatlantic, they could just use them up in the mines, like mercury mines and stuff. So a slave from like 16 to would be really productive at 17, and they'd just work them hard enough that they died before they were 19, and then they'd get more. And so chattel slavery had that feeling that at least they wanted to continue the life and then have the slaves have children, and so who were born into slavery, so it could be a self-continuing. That was partly a response probably to England ending the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade. The history of slavery, it's pretty dramatic, and it's just urgent. I don't know, it fills you with so much urgency that I've cared a lot about all of that history, or at least what I'm aware of. And
It makes you a perfect candidate for this, then. You'll see. So, would it be okay if I showed you a 3-minute video? It's part of the social experiment. It's hard to watch.
3 minutes? That long?
It's made to be short so that people don't feel like it's too long and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Thank you so much.
It's hard to watch.
You'll
It's
see,
like,
you'll see. You don't have to. Like, you can stop at any time, of course. I appreciate you bearing with me. This is the story of Charlie. Charlie was just born after 9 months in her mother's belly. Her mother grooms her affectionately as they instantly develop a strong bond. A few hours later, in confusion and distress, she is taken away from her mother and put onto a truck. As they drive away, her mother desperately tries to catch up with them, but that's the last time they will see each other. Charlie is now kept isolated in the calf hutch and fed on powdered breast milk replacer. When she's 15 months old, Charlie is led into what the farmers call a rape rack. She can't move away while an arm is inserted into her behind and a syringe injects bull semen into her. Charlie is now pregnant. Like her before them, her babies are stripped from their mother shortly after birth. This separation is heartbreaking for Charlie, who bonded strongly with them. She cries for her calves for days after they disappear. To no avail. Her male babies are killed in a slaughterhouse for humans' veal. All the other animals coming from smaller farms, just like Charlie's babies, meet their fate in that same slaughterhouse. Her female babies will be put through the same cycle of exploitation as she was. This cycle repeats every single year. She is now a breast milk machine for humans to use, before she collapses. Charlie is now unusable as she is too injured. After years of exhausting loss trauma from losing so many babies, of yearly pregnancies, of unnatural amounts of breast milk produced, and of countless infections and diseases, her body gives out. Since she suffers from lameness, she is picked by a dozer and sent away. She smells the blood miles away from the slaughterhouse. Fear sets in. Charlie was never freed. What if someone had rescued her? What if she had been lucky enough to spend the rest of her days surrounded by other cows, free from exploitation, in a sanctuary? What if she had been reunited with one of her many babies? What if she was never brought into existence in the first place? Charlie is one victim of one type of exploitation. Trillions of animals are enslaved and exploited by humans every single year for their flesh, secretions, bodies, or labor. Thanks for watching that. Let me put this away real quick. Okay, so I really appreciate you watching this whole thing. So the reason why I put you through all the questions is because the answers explain really well the principle of veganism. Yeah, a lot of people think it's just a diet, but really it's the stance against non-human animal use and slavery. Obviously, we agreed on all the answers you gave, and based on that, what would prevent you from rejecting the notion that other animals are here to serve you and going vegan?
Oh. Well, I don't know. There's, I don't know for sure. It's kind of a paradox. I mean, I'm not a big meat eater, and I don't know why for sure. It's just that I haven't really wanted to be for quite a while. But when it comes to that question, because I'm not against, eating meat, especially for other people. But at the same time, it's a paradox kind of. But some of the practices, I don't. But some of that stuff is so unhealthy. I don't know. I mean, the genetically modified chicken, and I don't know how healthy it is. It's like, but especially, yeah, I don't personally like it, especially just that super. I mean, I've seen things where birds, like chickens, I guess, they're kind of in a steel thing that just holds them until as they grow, and then they're force-fed food, kind of almost by machine, and stick it in their mouth and squirt it in and move on to the next one. And so that kind of stuff is pretty awful. And then not understanding, I don't know, there's a lot to be gained from being more humane about the whole, and not, so like killing without as much pain or something.
That's why I asked you, about the welfarists and the abolitionists. So the welfarists is like, in this case, are people who believe in animal welfare, and the abolitionists are the vegans who say, no, let's abolish slavery.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Right. Hmm. Yeah, I don't think about it too much because like I care about the treatment of dogs and cows, but yeah, I guess I don't think about it too much. For myself, I do eat some meat sometimes, but not often.
So it would be easier for you to make the transition then.
Yeah, and I like vegetables also. So it's part of why don't I eat meat? Because there are times when I ate less, and like now I still don't, like just pretty much almost never. But like in this place, like with salad, I'll sometimes get a little bit of the chicken and put it in there, and it seems like good protein. And
But from the chicken's point of view, right? Because we don't think about their point of view, because to us they are objects, right? Because they're already cut up and stuff. But I just want to kind of talk again about the fact that, because that's really important, because a lot of people don't necessarily think about that too much. But it's also eggs, honey, all these things that we do. For example, going to the zoo, things like that we do that are exploiting or enslaving other animals. And so, if you were one of these animals in the video, how urgently would you want humans to stop doing that to you?
well, really urgent.
Like you said earlier, it made me think
especially
about that.
especially that mass like industrial factories of pigs or chickens or cows when they're just kind of in a cage and force fed some kind of nutrient that makes them gain weight so they can be chopped up and sell for more money. um, that's
Yeah,
just not
that's horrific suffering. But we're also talking about the small farmers, because that's still like,
what
we're also talking about the small farmers, of course, because even if there is
small
less,
farmers.
yeah, because even if there's less suffering, it's still slavery, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's true. There's some people who feel like domesticated animals is wrong, and that it and I've at times been able to sort of see that, but like with dogs, I also feel that most dogs really like their humans.
Yeah, it's a complicated situation for sure, because yeah, that's like a whole discussion that I don't really want to get into, because I think this is something we would have to talk about once we already understand, as a society, veganism already, I think it would be easier. But even so, that's a very interesting conversation. But then you said you don't really know what's, preventing you, and you also said something in the lines of, I don't really think it's wrong for other people to do that to animals.
Right. Yeah. And partly it's because I feel like I prefer to let other people have their own decisions. I don't know.
Yeah, but they're not letting the animals have their own decisions.
Right, and it's wrong. There's also the people who work or have to work in those environments. It's not good for the people either.
Definitely, there's way more crime and like sexual violence and things like that when you in a slaughterhouse, for example.
To live and to be healthy and don't have really much of a career or something, which I don't know,
So it would
which
be
I
better
don't
for
either.
everybody.
Yeah.
Vegan,
Okay. Yeah.
So are
My
you?
nephew,
Yeah.
who's he's I don't know, 30 something, but he's vegan, and he's a very interesting person.
So maybe if you
But he
talk to him,
also
you'll have some
he's
support.
also
And so, what do you think you're gonna do moving on from this conversation?
well, I guess I could think more about what I think about the, I don't know what to call it, but I mean, there's a simple word because it used to be, raised on farms, pigs and cats and sold and traded
Slaves.
and what?
Yeah.
Yes.
They're slaves.
Yeah.
And when they're hunted, they're used as objects, because it's not only slavery, of course, when it comes to veganism, it's using them as objects.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. Well, you
And we're
know,
fishing.
yeah, exactly. That's very important. They're actually the most exploited animals by humans. There's like 2 trillion fish every year that are, killed by humans for, their flesh. So that's very important for sure. So I'm just going to give you a card. I really appreciate you with being so open-minded and taking the time. So there's like this group on Facebook. If you want to check us out, we have free monthly potlucks. Everybody can come. It's just vegan food, and I would love to see you there. Until the day that you do go vegan, other animals will be exploited and enslaved for you.
Okay. Yeah. And that includes especially like animal products, because even if I don't necessarily, but yeah, yep, yeah. But probably even, well, I don't know if it's an effective going vegan. It's like trying to, at one point, rejecting automobiles, and
Oh, well,
it's a kind of thing where, like for my life, for quite a long time, really had very little use of automobiles at all, and was pretty much not using automobiles. But then when I go to the store, and everything's transported with automobiles, so even though I was especially free of that, and still am mostly, but still I'm getting all the benefits of whatever petrol.
I totally get that but I would say that's different because using cars is not like really something you can do black or white, like not do at all. Being vegan is like it is black or white because you can use them or you can just reject to use them. And of course, for example, you might take a taxi and then in the taxi there's leather. That's different, but like until we have a vegan world, we won't be able to avoid these cases. But we can be the change, for the animals and not be participating in the problem, at least.
And there are lots of other benefits too. I worry about the health of the seas. So around Japan, it's uncertain if you can get fish that's not poisoned with heavy metals and stuff. But also knowing that whenever whales beach and some of the bigger things like dolphins too die and just beach, it seems pretty scary. So when those industries also stress that environment more, I don't know, it's kind of a contradiction. But
Veganism being a justice movement for these animal victims by humans, like a plant-based diet, especially animal-free plant-based diet, is really good for the environment. I mean, it's way better for the environment, and also it has benefits for health. But of course, on a plant-based diet, like any diet, you can be unhealthy or healthy if you plan it well.
Oh, I had a friend, and we were kind of friends, but kind of passing all the time, but she became very, very, very vegan. And then I think she got mad at me because I didn't just have a real strong feeling that I'm vegan, but
I understand that.
but I've been, like for maybe 10 years, I almost didn't eat any meat. And I still really eat very little, but I've kind of started to think, maybe wrongly, but that it possibly isn't as healthy to not eat any meat, because like for a lot of physical work and like an athlete or running and stuff, that the enzymes of meat can be good for your muscles and tendons.
So I hear two different things here. I hear a concern about health, and I hear something about eating a little bit, for example, like using a little bit of animals or something like that. So the first one, I hear a lot of this about this concern, and something that's really empowering to know is that there's this like the biggest organization of nutrition professionals in the world, which is the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Through 117 studies, including meta-analysis, which are really, really like the best kind of study, they've stated that a well plant-based diet, like all diets, is suitable for all ages, athletes, and pregnant women. And there's actually a bunch of athletes that just like go plant-based for their performance. And also what you said about eating less, for example, flesh or secretions. What about the individuals that have to be enslaved and exploited for these, like the small amounts of time that you do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just seeing it from the victim helps. Like it's when you see it from the victim's point of view, it's extremely easy to be vegan, because it's horrific their situation.
Yeah. I will have to think about it more and probably consider maybe not, um, just think about it more and maybe think about being more vegan even.
You gotta do it for the animals. It's not as hard as people would think it is. You know, like people go vegan and then they're like, that wasn't really what I thought it would be the transition, but
Well,
you know.
yeah, and again, even though my nephew, he's a really good cook, and so he's vegan, but man, he makes the best food. It's so good.
Yeah, it's like any diet, you know, you can make it really well or not well, you know. Do
He's a really good cook.
you have any questions or?
No, I mean, you've reminded me. There was a man who I knew, and his daughter Sarah. I knew her when she was little. He kind of really liked to have his own little farm, and she loves animals, so they have chickens, turtles, they have ducks. But he died young, just suddenly. But she was telling a story about him because she really hated him butchering chickens, and he quit finally because it upset her so bad. But
Did they make a century or?
no, I don't know what, but he quit harvesting his own chickens.
That's a euphemism, you know.
Yeah, but it is one of the sweet stories about their life.
Well, you know, if you're not vegan, you're contributing to the murdering, for example. No, but it is hard to hear, but it is literally what's happening because of the choices that you make, you know?
I do have a book that I haven't read. It's like Eating Animals. It's some title like that. Do you know that book?
Yeah.
And
I haven't read it, but I've heard
I
of
have it, and I haven't read it, and I've had it for years, so maybe.
it. Might be a vegetarian book, which is very different because it's still exploiting other animals, but
I did have a strong leaning to being vegetarian, and in like in my 20s. So I've really liked vegetarianism, but that doesn't. But as a vegetarian, but still, what ripping the flesh of murdered, chickens.
well,
So
it
bad.
is, you know, yeah, exploiting other animals for their eggs or their secretions or for their backs, you know, like horses, riding horses, for example. The experimentation is quite horrific as well. If you have any questions, like I have my socials on there, feel free to shoot me a message. And this is like some websites, like there's a free documentary and stuff.
Yeah. Good luck,
Yeah, thanks.
and thank you for your time and everything.
Well, thanks. Please remember the victims
Right.
and go vegan. Like right now, there's not, you know, because every time you do engage in that, there are victims on the other side, you know, and it doesn't have to happen. So I know it might seem daunting to a lot of people, but it really isn't as you think. So just be comforted with it.
It wouldn't be pretty much at all. I mean,
It's a mental thing to, you know.
yeah. Okay.
Have a good one.
Well, thanks.
Thanks.
It's been interesting. And
If you'd like to support my activism and access exclusive content, please consider becoming a Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon member. Thanks for watching and see you next time.